Okay, Perry, so the Fife property market, is it really holding up despite the doom and gloom of the newspapers? Talk to me.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, the Fife housing market, as we've seen really over the last 3 months, Jim, I think we've just seen it becoming a bit back to normal, haven't we? A bit more normality is there after that 2 years of COVID and high booming prices within Fife. We've kind of seen now that it's starting to ease itself in.
Yeah,
a couple of years of insane demand is now stabilising, and lockdown started to kind of slow it down a bit, is what we're seeing for sure.
Okay. It's been a complete race for space, really, when lockdown was in, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So what about
I mean, even with the blackening economic doom mongers that we're seeing at the moment, which, you know, you can never stop putting your TV off, but, you know, the doom mongers are forecasting a harsh slowdown in the British property market, and that would obviously include the Fife market. But the number of people buying and selling their homes is still very good for this time of year, and we're not seeing that impact yet. It's a normalisation we're seeing, Jim, I think.
I've got somebody on just now, exactly the same thing on social media, just back and forward, and I'm like, so where's your facts rather than opinions? And there's no facts. There's nothing behind it at all. It's just sheer, I think this is my opinion. It's like, so where's all the facts backing up with that opinion? There's nothing at all. I mean, whilst many homeowners are actually reducing the asking prices, it's not the 20% or even the 30% that, and the drop in the property commentators and the newspaper journalists are actually predicting. Looking at the stats, could you look at the stats for Fife, Perry? What's your thoughts on this over the last 3 months since the disastrous Truss mini budget? Do they really make good reading?
I think they make great reading, to be quite honest with you. And just to go a step back before we go into that, Jen, you're talking about whoever you were messaging earlier today. We've had the situation actually today where we've had written offer and secured a property sale first day back. So it's there, the demand is there. Our phones have literally been ringing off the hook, as were they through our period of everyone else's holiday while we were working. It's been
holiday.
It's been quite busy.
What's a holiday? What's a holiday? There's no such thing as a holiday in our business.
No, absolutely not. Definitely. But I mean, of that, let's get into some of the stats then. So, I mean, of the 1,185 Fife properties that have sold, subject to contracts concluding, since last September. So that's a lot of properties still from last September. Length of time it took to achieve the average sale in Fife was 39 days. That's across Fife as a whole.
Now that's pretty good. Can I just drill that down to the areas then? So in the Cooper area, out of the 30 properties that were sold, now this is just solely the town of Cooper since late September as well. The average time it took in Cooper to sell was 26 days. In the East Neuk area, 38 properties were sold since that time, and it took 36 days on average to sell a property. In the Glenrothes area, there was 151 properties actually sold, and it actually took an average sale of 15 days. But that's not surprising for Glenrothes because there's still a fantastic price point. Leavenmouth was actually 108 properties actually sold, and they took 26 days. And St Andrews, drum roll, with 51 properties, and they took 25 days to sell. Now, when we drill down a bit further, in the Fife area, on a macro level then, in the Fife area, how did that break down then when we looked at things like the split between the price areas and the number of days actually to sell in the Fife area? How did that look, Perry?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that does play a part in it. Higher value properties, you know, you may have bigger challenges, depends on the demand for those. But I think what's interesting, before we got onto that, Jim, when we talk about the average 5 days of, if we break that back a bit to what you have been predicting and communicating, and even the Sunday updates lot, is that it's taking between 4 and 6 weeks to sell. Some will sell sooner, but actually that is proven correctly with the stats that have just come out.
Yeah.
So I think that's a positive thing. So when you look at split by price, which across Fife will do it, So I mean, the under £100,000 properties, on average in Fife, it's taken 43 days. If you go from the 100 to 200, it's 34 days. If you go from 200,000 to 300,000, it's 39 days.
Okay.
300 to 400 is 44 days. 400 to 500 is 43 days, and 500 to a million is 53 days. So that is working along at that starting point that you're describing really previously of 4 weeks to 6 weeks, potentially 8 weeks, depending on your price point. And then your million plus properties are 28 days.
£1 million property plus is taking 28 days to sell.
That's quite surprising, isn't it? That's the fastest selling.
You would naturally think it would take a lot longer to sell. So in the actual areas, I drilled this down as well again when we looked at the actual areas in particular. The one that took the longest actually to sell in the Cooper area was 62 days, and it was under 100,000. No properties, this is actually quite interesting as well, no properties in that period since September was over 400,000 that actually sold. So there's nothing over 400 actually sold. Now, it doesn't mean to say there's properties came on at 400,000 and never sold. It's just that nothing in that area sold over 400,000. And there's a misconception in a lot of areas. People think they're really high price points and you can't afford to live. I mean, there's this thing going about. It's like this hearsay, for want of a better phrase, going about saying that properties are unaffordable in the areas now. Well, that's not the case, because if you look at, for example, East Neuk, East Neuk under 100,000 sold in 9 days. There was nothing in East Neuk above £1 million. The other areas are Glenrothes. Longest time to sell was 200 to 300,000. Anything under 100,000 was selling in 18 days. Leavenmouth was actually, anything Leavenmouth, nothing over 100,000 was sold in Leavenmouth, but over 500,000, sorry. But in Leavenmouth area, you don't expect a property to be over 500,000 anyway, because they're all price points which are actually affordable. That's the most important thing.
I think what's really noticeable, though, and to point out in Leaven, I know what you're saying there about the £500,000 point for Leavenmouth, but actually there are some luxurious properties in the Leavenmouth area, and if you look at the 400 to 500,000 pound mark, those properties only took 3 days to sell.
Yeah, but
so there is a demand.
Properties. You put these same properties in St Andrews, and they'll be almost 50% more in value, or maybe a bit more even. But it just shows you it's everything to do with the location more than anything. So you can get a similar type of property and exactly the same property in new build in the St Andrews area, and you can put it in the Leavenmouth area, and it'll be a completely different price point, and it will be affordable. So it's really all down to where you want to stay, isn't it? And what location you want to stay in.
I think it's about location. I think it's about the journey that you're on at the moment as well. You know, what maybe is going on with your family. Obviously, the St Andrews area, you've got a lot of people that connect with the university there. So, you know, that drives that market a little bit. Again, the East Neuk, you've got very much people who are maybe in that latter side of life who are looking for that quieter lifestyle, and it's all about lifestyle choice then. And then you've got the Leavenmouth area and the Glenrothes areas, which are predominantly doing really well in the lower end price market. And that's purely simply because families who want bigger homes, who have an affordability point, who can still have great lifestyle. You look at Leaven, you've got the beaches and all the activities that you can do there, and the golf, etc. So you can have a really good lifestyle with a large property, as you say, for economically more viable option for a family, isn't it?
Look at some of the ones you're getting in Leavenmouth, though. 400,000 for that beautiful detached at Links Road, one of the premier positions that you would get, and it's right next to the seaside, and right along from the golf course, the Links golf course, and then almost, you know, right along to the other end to the high street, and all the amenities you need, and then you've got the train station as well coming into Leavenmouth. So at that price point, it's a fantastic property for what you would have in the area, and then it's easy commuting to anywhere you ever want. What about when we split this down then by type? And I mean, like semi-detached, detached, and terraced. How long are they taking to sell then?
Yeah, I mean, so there is a difference there as well. So if we look at Fife as an overall market, the Fife apartments and flats are on average taking 44 days to sell. Your terraced and townhouses, 36 days. Your semi-detached, 33, and your detached, 40. The thing that doesn't surprise me in this is the semi-detached bit, because we've definitely seen an uptake in semi-detached, haven't we? And we've certainly brought a lot of them to the market recently. So the semi-detached, again, it goes back to my previous statement. You're getting quality housing that's not necessarily in a row, but that generally will have wrapped round garden that has the space that you want, with not all the neighbours on top of you, which is why I think the semi-detached is a really popular one. But that they're selling the quickest, 33 days.
And the price point for a semi-detached is far different compared to a detached. There is a huge disparity in terms of the price point right across Fife, actually. Interestingly enough, when we drill that down to the local areas, when you looked in the Cooper area, it was actually the flats that took a lot longer to sell. About 80 days, which I was quite surprised about, because I thought Cooper would be actually quite there'd be quite a huge demand for the Cooper area, especially with the fact that you've got St Andrews on the doorstep round the corner. And then it's a good market town. And then you've got the train station as well, which is quite local. And it's great for commuting to Dundee and onto Glenorchy and Kirkcaldy anyway. And it's a market town, more or less. It's, it's your perfect rural community and sort of village.
Well, it is. It's kind of village, but it does come across like a town as well. So, you would expect that that's where the young professionals are going to be, because it's easy to commute, as you say, from Cooper even through to Edinburgh. So those types of people generally are in the apartment forum, aren't they, for buying?
Again, East Neuk was the 80 days. The fastest time actually in Cooper to sell was semi-detached, which is what you were talking about. Detached was in East Neuk area. In the Glenorchy area, the longest time to sell was detached at 22 days. The quickest time was actually semi-detached at 13 days. Flats did actually quite well in the Glenorchy area. Leamouth, longest time to sell, 39 days, was townhouses and terraced, and the fastest was semi-detached again. Semi-detached are actually really popular. St Andrews, fastest to sell was, longest to sell was actually semi-detached at 47 days, and the fastest to sell was a tie between flats and detached at 18 days. I mean, that to me, St Andrews is a bit a misnomerly, in terms of you're not really sure if it's student housing or if it's if it's people wanting to actually physically stay there, and we do get a lot of that. And student housing obviously is in high demand right now, because obviously the intake with the university and where that's going. But again, I do think there's a lot of scope for further increases in the flats market, primarily because they're lower priced, they're easily to maintain, they're less probably to run as well, and less of a council tax band as well, especially ground floor apartments. That's where I think there's an opportunity there to add value to a ground floor apartment, because it's perfect for a downsizer as well, who wants to consider releasing a huge amount of equity, maybe from a big, huge, detached home, and then, spend it on themselves for a change. There's no point in keeping it. You can't take it with you. So for goodness sake, sell the big house, move into a wee small house, or even rent, and release all that money and go and travel the world or do something with it. Pass it on to your kids now, so there's no issue with inheritance tax later on, because most price points are actually quite high prices, so you can pass it on at that point as well.
Yeah, it's true what you say there about the ground floor apartments. I mean, we just listed one there on the 2nd. And that is a ground floor, 2-bedroom. It's in West Weems. It literally is a stone's throw from the waterfront. It's really lovely inside. £75,000 offers over, and it is a fantastic flat. It's got its little balcony. Okay, it's communal garden area, but actually you could come out your front door and you're literally on that walkway on the coastal path.
Yeah, you're just along the road from Kirkcaldy, plus the fact you're out of the way, so you've not got anybody to bother with. And with the fact that you've got home deliveries now from Asda's and Sainsbury's and Ocado, all these different places, and Amazon and all the rest of it, and even the local shops and local businesses do that as well now, through the Spar shops and the Premier shops and things like that. So there's no particular reason to think now it's like you're cut off, because you're not. You've got everything on your doorstep, and you can just get everything delivered for yourself now. So why would you bother, having to be anywhere else? And then as well, it was just in the news now about, they're seeing the surveys now coming back and saying most people will actually spend most time in their work from Tuesday to Thursday, and Mondays and Fridays will now almost merge into almost a weekend, as they don't go into their work or they don't go into the premises, if that makes sense. They work from home. So there's this emerging pattern of behaviour from COVID is still sticking with us, but it's slightly changing. But it's coming to, and I'll guarantee you this will happen. More people will look for lifestyle in terms of where they live now. I know that sounds daft because that's obviously, well, did you know want that in the first place? But more people became practical and wanting to be closer to their work. But we're still at this impasse where there's no mass rush to get back into the office from a lot of the big corporations and their employees. They're actually seeing the benefit as well as they begin to give up leases on potential big, huge premises that they have, and therefore saving their money and actually getting people to work from home, effectively paying for all the bills and all the rent on their own money.
Yeah,
when you think about that,
some companies have gotten onto that quite smartly, Jim, I must admit. But I think actually people now have also got used to that way of life, and I think that the current economy and the low unemployment or high employment, depending on how you want to look at it, I think that is also making employers be a bit more flexible with their staff. So if they've got really good quality staff, then actually they're quite prepared to give them that flexible living now, because they had it in that time. They've proven in COVID that they can still be productive even if they are working at home, and therefore actually things change for them.
Yep. As always, folks, if you're listening in and tuning in, you want to make a comment or you want to add to that debate, please feel free to put something in the comments. We'll see it on here anyway, and we can discuss it with you. Good afternoon, Andrea. Thanks for listening in and tuning in. And if anybody else, as I said, wants to comment and jump in, and even on the rerun as well, you can comment as well. More than happy. The more the merrier for the debate as it continues. So the latest sold house price data from the Land Registry shows that Fife house prices have actually currently remained at 9.3% higher than they were 12 months ago, and the rate has actually dropped quite. The rate of growth has dropped significantly. Last month, Fife house prices actually only rose 0.3%. Thus, we are seeing the first sign that the property market is actually starting to cool. But remember, they rose 0.3%. Whereas everybody else is getting told in the news that the prices are actually dropping. But in the locality, Fife house prices have actually risen 0.3%. So it's stabilisation more than anything.
Yeah, it goes right back to our opening statement when we said about, what's the last 3 months been like, and it is becoming more normal. And I think it is what we're seeing now. And I think actually 0.3% doesn't sound a great deal when you say it. But when you really think about that, Jim, that's 0.3% of a property sale now that has still benefited from that uplift in the home reports in the last 2 years that we've seen in the growth. So it's 0.3% of a growing number, not of a stabilised neutral number from 2 years ago. And
the 30 odd percent of this since the start of the pandemic, that's the same as well, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So with interest rates, what about base rates and that? What have we got to say about that then?
Yeah, so in regards to that, with interest rates at 3.5% and further increases likely in 2023, it will still undoubtedly spur ongoing cooling in Fife properties potentially. Values, it could be doubtful that we'll see the Fife property market go into the deep freeze. I don't think that's going to happen. We've just evidenced that just now. I know the doom mongers are predicting that, but actually we're not seeing that. There is still an increase. We're seeing that Fife property market is still outperforming, that it still improved in value last month. So I don't see where the doom and gloom is, as you say, when they talk about prices dropping, we're still seeing that increases. So, recent articles on the Fife property market we've seen have shown a 5% to 10% reduction in Fife house prices over the next 12 to 18 months. And we've spoke about that before. You think it's probably more around 4% stroke 8% though, Jim, don't you?
I think, I'm saying 5 and 10%, but I'm saying it's more like 5. I still think Fife's very affordable. £175,000 to buy an average house in Fife. And I know people in East Nuke, people in St Andrews will think, God, that's cheap. It's like, but that's what it is effectively when you take into account the mass amount of houses that are in right across Fife, including Kirkcaldy and Glenrothes and Dunfermline. So when you take all these properties into account, that actually levels the whole figures out at 175,000. North East Fife might be a completely different price point, and that's fine. But it's still very, very affordable to actually live and work in Fife. And yet the average salary for Fife as well is kind of similar to the rest of Scotland and the rest of the UK. So the amount to buy a house, from the time multiplier of your salary is, again, within 5.5 times. So very, very affordable.
I think when you look at it as well, I mean, that only takes us back to the prices that we achieved in mid-late 21 or early 22. And that for me is the key thing. I know they're saying decreasing, but they're not giving you that reflective moment behind their statements.
I think the other thing as well is landlords have experienced double-digit rent growth in the last 12 to 18 months with a shortage of rental properties coming onto the market. Now, when I say double-digit rental growth, this is right across the UK, remember. Within Fife itself, it has not really been the double-digit rental growth as everybody thinks it is, because, again, we're getting hit with this constant bombardment of the news being a catch-all. I said it yesterday, or I said it on the 1st of January. I said it on the 1st of January and put the soundbite on my social media post and goes, this is the hottest day on record since the start of the year.
I saw that.
There you go. You can make anything sound like really worrying or fearful if you put it in the context of how you want to say it. So maybe overall landlords have experienced double-digit rental growth in the last 12 to 18 months. But if you take it over all the years since the last 20 years, it's actually smoothed itself out to say that the rental growth hasn't actually increased as much as possibly or similar to what the rate of inflation is anyway. So all it is it's getting caught up. The classic example is you usually find when house prices start to rise, rents start to rise maybe 2 or 3 years later, because the return on capital is now coming through with more landlords coming into the market, or landlords having to remortgage maybe to do improvements or repairs or buy more investment property. So that's why it has to be reflective of the current situation. I mean, why would you expect a landlord to rent a house for £450 to you a month? It's maybe £500,000. That would be utter craziness. Why would they do that?
Realistic.
Yeah, I'm going to live in a house for a £500,000 for £450 a month. That you couldn't even get that on a mortgage. You couldn't get the interest on a mortgage on that. So when you think about the context of that, you have to take it into account of the repairs and improvements and the financing of the property as well. So that's why rents are at the level they're at.
I think when you were speaking as well on the lettings show that you did with Richard between Christmas and New Year, one of the things that I noticed on that you mentioned was the fact that actually the types of people that we're seeing as well now, you've got more of that professional level of person they're expecting that they're going to pay £1,100, £1,500 for a 3 or 4 bedroom detached house. That's what they anticipate doing, and they're happy to do that. So why would a landlord say, well, I'm only going to charge you £500? I know you want to pay £1,500, but I'll only take £500.
The key here as well is you don't see them quibbling about it, because they realise the entry costs and the exit costs of buying and selling a house is hugely disproportionate in comparison to renting it for 2 or 3 years. And in the context of things. And this is where the psyche of the British public and the Fife public have to get round that mentality, at the fact that you when you work out the figures, it's actually cheaper for someone to rent a house in the short term, and I mean over the next 2 years, than actually buy it and try to sell it, because then they've got the entry exit cost, plus they've got the cost of financing for the mortgage as well. And if they don't have a mortgage and they're buying cash, then they've still got the loss of the return on investment of the cash that they bought it with, that they could have got somewhere else. And then they've got the risk as well that they carry with buying the house, that the market could actually drop and they could lose there as well.
Absolutely. And actually, I'm a good endorsement of that, because that's exactly what I did, wasn't it? You sold my house. We were kind of thinking we'd come out of the first lockdown, that little window where we were back exchanging properties again. And we were like, what do we do here? Do we rent? Do we buy? Do we just rush in? We decided not to do that, rush in and buy a new house, because when we sat down and we looked at all of the buying and exit costs, we thought this could potentially really cost us a lot of money for a short-term thing, to just take a house rather than the house. And so we rented for a year. Things calmed down a little bit, and then we were fortunate enough to do it. And that was definitely the right way to do it. And what we paid for rent over that 12-month period was nowhere near what we would have paid if we had exit and rebuying costs, etc. Vastly different.
So I can't see in the short term, I can't see rental market changing because of the restriction in supply, and especially with the amount of inquiries I'm getting right now of landlords wanting to sell. I've just had a landlord right at the back before this, probably about an hour before this, on the phone saying, I probably need to sell now to take advantage of the capital gains. So, you want to do a deal, coming to me direct. You want to do a deal so I can get it over the line before the end of the tax year. Therefore, I'll be able to get the capital gain on it because they're going to change. They're going to restrict the capital gains next year. So they're taking down the capital gains. They've got the 6% EDS. That the Scottish government's really hammering the market overall.
And are you seeing a difference with landlords, with that additional dwelling supplement coming in and that increase in that percentage?
It certainly, when you look at the numbers, it certainly makes it unattractive in terms of the return on investment, because you're paying that money up front and it's just basically money in the fire, because you're throwing 6% at a price. So, you buy something for 100,000, you're throwing £6,000 in the fire. But when you look at the long-term prospects, the medium to long-term prospects, or the amount of property would go up, then the 6% shouldn't really put you off, because your 6% will be recovered over the next 10 to 15 years anyway.
Yeah, so it goes back to what you say as well, Jim, about it's not a short-term gain.
No,
it's a long game when you get into landlording, isn't it? If you're going to have multiple properties,
it's always been a long game. It's never been anything different. And if anybody ever thought they were ever going to make a short-term profit on being a landlord, they're delusional, absolutely delusional. So last week we actually stated that it's not wise to only focus on house prices, but also take reference to the amount of property transactions completed that feed the fire of the British property market. Now remember, this is all about property transactions to tell the health of the property market. It's not really about price, because the number of property transactions means that more people, when they move house, will be using solicitors, they'll be using estate agents, they'll be using contractors, they'll be using, they'll be getting kitchens, they'll be getting bathrooms, they'll be getting decoration, they'll be getting carpets, they'll be getting all these things done. So the more people, the health of the housing market and the economy itself, the local economy, should be driven by the number of property transactions in the market, not necessarily by the price. So we'll all go on about, and I've said it before, somebody says, oh yeah, but you're putting money in the bank by buying your own house. And I'm like, aye, you're certainly putting money in the bank's bank because you're paying a mortgage.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. The only thing you're doing by buying a property is actually securing your position in the property ladder so you can upgrade or downgrade from there. And therefore actually taking away the risk of prices going up or prices going down, and actually keeping yourself, or you're de-risking the situation for you to be able to buy and sell in the future, because you're locking yourself in. It's not an investment, your house that you live in. It's the last thing you should be looking at. It's only an investment in the future of you and your family. That's all it is. And it allows you to move up and down the property ladder without being exposed. That's the word I'm looking for. Exposed to these swings and fluctuations in property prices, because you're locking yourself in at that level as well with having that house. This is why I said on one of my wealth creation shows, we've bought our other house already and we rent it, the one that we'll downsize to. Therefore, every single gain that we get in our property that we live in right now as our own home will actually be money in the bank. Because this is a second home to us we're sitting in now. I've got right now that we're living in, because our intention is to move to the other one. So therefore, my price is locked in already. So if I move in the next 10 years and this goes up by 20% in the next 10 years, then I've had that gain, and that is right in my pocket, because I've got that other house I'm going to anyway, and I've locked in at that value.
Yeah.
Equally, if the market drops, then I take that hit as well, because I bought the other one at the higher price. So it's swings and roundabouts, but again, it's all about a long-term strategy. You should never be gambling with the property market unless you're prepared to lose. Just like anything like that. And I say it's gambling, but it's no really. It's it's pretty stable, the property market, as always, and it always has been over the last since records began, I suppose. I think when I looked at the price, actually, when property prices have gone up since records began, it was something like 504,000 or something like that. I don't know, or 5,400% or something. It was 5,400%. That was it. Since property prices actually first began, property prices have actually gone up. Inflation's never gone up anything near that, and gold's never made that. No, nothing else has made that.
I think, as you say, though, I think the key thing in all of this is really depends on your journey and what point of life you're at and what your circumstances are, and understanding your facts, isn't it, to understand whether or not you should do a quick or a long term or a short term, or what really does work for you.
Well, look at for example, in March 2021, let's talk about property transactions. 135,670 properties were actually sold. Yet a month later, it dropped to 86,600. And a couple of months later, it rose again in June 2021 to 165,290 homes sold. For it to drop in July to 64,000. So see how that changes overall. And it just depends on what's going on. I mean, whilst it's good news for estate agents and removal companies, we always seem to get castigated. It's like we're there to do a job. We're there to do a job. Somebody keeps going on and you people inflating prices. It's like, I'm getting a surveyor out to set a price of a property who's actually going out and setting the price of the property. And then I'm putting on the market, and the person that's prepared to pay for it is inflating the price. No me. But they seem to say it's an easy target to blame an estate agent for it. It's your fault. It's your fault all these houses are getting sold to second home holiday owners. I'm not the one that accepts the price. I'm not the one that accepts the seller or the buyer.
We do the best job we can for our sellers at the end of the day.
I've often said this is a profession where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You're stuck in the middle, and you get blamed for everything in between, regardless if you do a good job or no. It doesn't
We've got
matter.
big chins, Jim. We can take it.
There'll be somebody out there, ready to have a pop. So, whilst it's good news for estate and removal companies, it can skew the property market and put undue pressure on the property market. Pressure which could cause a housing crash if not put under check. Like most things, slow, steady, and consistent is the preferred option for the property market. And throughout 2022, the number of properties selling in the UK has been a steady average of 68,832 per month, ranging from a low of 61,800 in January 2022 to 72,200 in July 2022. This consistency, this is the most important thing. This consistency, this is what we need. We'll continue into 2023 and return to a more normal housing market. This is what we need. Stability, consistency, normality. No the swings in the boom and bust economy. That's not good for anybody, and not good for anybody's purse, their finances. One final thing I've noticed about the Fife property market, though, in the last 6 months, is the number of larger properties coming on the market that was sold over 25 years ago. Have you noticed that as well?
Yeah, absolutely, we have done. I think when we talked about the thresholds there, the 400 to 500 and the 500 plus mark, absolutely those properties, when they're now coming to market, what we're finding is they've been in the families a very, very long time, and there is true circumstance that's maybe driving that sale. It could be downsizers. It could be that there's not that many people that were originally living in the home are living in the home now. So deaths and whatnot happen at certain age points, which is a bit of a sad story, of course. But that they tend to find that those properties, when they come on, they've been in the property, for generations. Is what we're seeing. Yeah.
And as well, and I'm actually saying to a lot of homeowners that are actually, and I said it the other night when I was talking about it, I says, if you've got a property that's a lot bigger and you're needing to downsize, this is the time to do it. Because if it does drop 10%, the drop in 10% of your house price right now is a lot more sizable, and the drop in the 10% you're going to gain actually going to a smaller property. An example of that is if you've got a property at 300,000 and it drops by 10%, you've lost 30 grand. If you're going to a property at 150,000, it loses 10%, it loses 15 grand. So you're losing 15 grand by waiting until next year for prices to drop.
Yeah.
So you should be selling now and gaining 15 grand. Because you're maybe paying 15 grand extra for the 150,000 one, but you're getting another 30,000 into the 300,000 that you're getting right now on yours.
Absolutely.
So you're up 15,000. So people with bigger houses need to sell now in order to capitalize on this market if it is to drop next year or this year. So what about homeowners in their 20s and 30s? What are you seeing with them?
So you talk about that. So the homeowners of 20s and 30s and early 40s tend to move every 5 or 6 years, which is very different to the people with the larger properties. Yet when they reach their 40s and 50s, they tend to stay put for much, much longer. And we do see that. And there's obvious reasons for that. Your 20s and 30s, they're maybe just starting out in relationships now. They're starting to grow their families. They're getting late 30s, early 40s. Actually, the family's getting bigger. So the little bubbas who shared a room, you now need 2 rooms. So it's all about family growth, isn't it? So that's the expectation that you would have. These properties only tend to come on the market when people pass away, or they're sold, or they're going to nursing homes when we talk about the bigger end properties. And that's the sad thing about that. And we do come across that as well. So that's where you see the larger ones coming on. But
why are they downsizing then? Why is the mature house owners downsizing then?
I think they downsize for several reasons, don't they? I mean, their children have flown the nest. That's what happened with me. That's what kind of made us decide to do it. Also, this relates to me as well, rattling around in a big home, accommodation really that you don't need. You know, I used to call my dining room the Christmas room because it was the only time we ever went in there was to have a Christmas dinner. And you think, what is the point of this? And many are being driven to sell their larger homes as well, of like the energy bills. I mean, that was a big factor for me as well. I was sitting thinking, how much is it costing to run this property? Not just your energy bills, your council tax, your maintenance of your garden, your maintenance of all the rooms. And so you start to ask yourself, where's the gain really for us on this?
You bury your head in the sand when it comes to that, I'll tell you, because then you work out how much it's costing you to have an empty room. Your Christmas room is a classic example. If you're costing maybe, I don't know, let's take a really good guess at this. It maybe costs you, what, £12,000 a year to run a property on basics like council tax and heating and lighting and just repair and improvement. So 12 grand a year. And then when you work out at the size of that house and you say you've maybe got how many, maybe 5 rooms, like 4 bedrooms, 1 reception, or 4 bedrooms, 2 receptions. So you've got 6. That means £2,000 for every single room you're costing you. Now, when you think about that, 1 Christmas room's costing you £2,000 a year, and then you put it into the context of how much do you have to earn to get £2,000 in your hand, then you start to think, wait a minute, I've got to earn maybe £3,500 to earn that 2 grand, because I've got tax and national insurance to come off of that money to get the 2 grand in my hand. And then how does that equate to how many man hours or woman hours, whatever you want to say, to what I need to do to earn that money? And this is the old example about, in order to do something, it's like before you actually get money in your pocket, the classic example is it's maybe the first 7 months of actually having a salary, it goes to tax and national insurance and the government. And then it's the next 5 months that you get from that, actually you're getting in your pocket. And that's the type of thinking I've always followed. You'll probably know that anyway. That's how I've always thought about things. It's like I completely resented living at Carnarchy Crescent because I had a room there sitting with all my rubbish in it from the day we moved in. It just had unopened boxes all that time. It was never decorated or anything. There was no use for that room at all. But I just loved the idea of living in a 3-bedroom, semi-detached, overlooking Leven and with panoramic views. Little did I know it was costing me a fortune. I was losing because effectively, right round the corner, I bought a maisonette, which is an upper apartment, which actually did us really well, and it was half the price of that. And Elaine was able to never work again, and yet she was working all that time just to pay for that extra room. It was empty.
It's mad, isn't it?
And I put it into that logical sense, and I thought, I could have started a family ages ago if that was the case. It's, you know what I mean?
I know that's what happens.
Hindsight's a great thing when you think about it. But there is a lot of learning opportunities out of that, and that is the classic example. And it is one of the bigger households and homes for people that have got, the kids have actually now flown the nest.
Yeah.
You always get, and I get this every single time, but they might come back for holidays. What? Sell your house, release half of your money, put them up in a hotel once in a blue moon. Because the hotel's only a couple of £100, where your house is about £150,000. So why would you do that? Or go and travel the world and enjoy yourself with the money in between? I'm sure kids would want you to do that rather than actually wait for you to die, to get their money. It's like
Absolutely.
that's, I mean, contrary to popular belief, most children don't want their parents to do that, actually.
No.
They just want them to go and enjoy their money while they've got it.
Yeah, they want them to have it. They've worked hard for it, and haven't they? So, I mean, we definitely see that the reason that those come up is, as you say, because they've flown the nest. I think the energy prices that we've spoken about as well. I think high inflation, you know, is playing a point in that. Never-ending maintenance costs, as we've spoken about as well, Jim, and just the whole general larger commitment that a bigger property requires from you in time and energy.
That's the
and
second
money.
reason, isn't it? It meant that the money can be released to downsize. The downsize has grown, meaning that the mature Fife homeowners can actually sell up and cash in and move to more manageable properties. And the amount of money released would be is pretty impressive, I'll tell you. So overall then, so what's your final thoughts on this? Because let's wrap up here. I'll be interested to hear anybody else's thoughts out there. So if you get a chance, please feel free to comment. So what's your final thoughts on this, Perry?
I think for me, I think the stability is a good thing, i.e. the normalisation that we're speaking about. I think that we're going to see a normal year for that in regards to the price points. I think that it's more realistic where we're at. I think that also the home reports have caught up with the last 2 years. And therefore, actually, in Fife, still to get percentage over of your home report today is a really strong position for us to be in. So for me, I think it's just going to stabilise a little bit, and I think that's a positive thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't disagree with that at all. I think we're, you know, potentially IMF, the International Money Federation, I think it is, was on the other day with a news report sitting saying they think a third of the world will go into recession. And I'm like, oh my God, that means 2/3 won't.
Exactly.
It's like, that's happy days. Because the way everybody was talking about, like, everybody's going to get it. But if you're telling me that only a third of it is, like, that could be a mild recession. That's what we need. So a mild recession, if that's the case, combined with less of a base rate rise, could actually stabilise inflation overall, which could actually mean stability to the complete market, which will mean, could we see property prices maybe no drop at all?
We haven't yet.
Well, we're guaranteed they're going to have some sort of inflation, because when you think about it, overall, right across the UK, every single month they've gone, oh, it's dropped that, it's dropped that, it's dropped that, but it's only like 0.5 or 0.6 or something like that. So these will summation, and when you do the last 12 months and add them all together, then at some point in time, we're going to have a negative drop for the plus that we've got. But I still think Fife house prices are going to be quite resilient because of that. Because we're not actually seeing the negatives. We're actually the positive side of that. Because remember, this is an average. When you get an average, somebody's going to have to be on the one side, the worst side of that, and somebody's going to be on the best side of that average. That's why there's an average. No, everybody's the same. So I think we're going to be on the better side of that, and property prices are actually not going to take as huge hit as what the rest of the UK is going to do, and some of the other more aspirational areas like the Glasgows, the Londons, and the Edinburghs. I genuinely think that's going to be the case, and we're going to be in a better position in the Fife market to actually be more resilient. So normality is more akin to the 2016, 2019 sort of years.
Yeah, I would say so.
Fine. When I looked at the other now about the number of properties on the market, this is actually quite good, because this has actually slowed down as well. The number of properties coming to market on Zoopla is 961 in Fife available for sale. Now, have we broken the 1,000 barrier just recently?
No, we were at 997.
Yeah, so it's never actually broken the 1,000 barrier. So now the supply is actually coming down a bit. So it'll be interesting to see over the next couple of months if that supply actually starts to pick up again, or people start to, you know, stay where they are. And if that's the case, that means house prices will actually be again more stable as a result, because there's less supply coming onto the market of where it is. So the summation out of this, though, is Fife homeowners need to be realistic about their pricing. Yet, as over 8 out of 10 sellers buy another home, the one you buy will be lower. So, if you're considering selling, you know, but give us a shout. That's really what it comes down to. That's what this is all about.
Absolutely.
And that's it. Thanks very much for coming on the show, Perry. Really appreciate it. And until next time, we'll see you for the Saturday show. Richard and I will be talking about all things landlord, property investors, and everything like that as well on Saturday. So we'll see you there at the Saturday show at 9:30. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.